The new Snow White movie just dropped this weekend, and along with watching that, I also watched the original Snow White movie. The original movie was a very charming movie, and I was surprised by how well it held up considering it's pushing 90 years old. There were a handful of things that naturally didn't hold up well, but overall, it was very enjoyable. And the absolute highlight of the movie was the dwarves. It was just so much fun whenever they were on screen. Now, before we get into the movie, I just have to say, I hate Disney live action remakes. They're just so lazy, and only two of them have actually been good or surpassed the original movie. Every other movie was just inferior. There's no reason to watch them over the original. I would have much preferred if they decided to remake the movies that they do it in animation. I think an art style not dissimilar to Puss in Boots: The Last Wish would do a lot for a lot of these old fairy tale movies. However, with all that said, if you were to remake an old Disney movie in any form, I do think that Snow White would be close to the top of the list for the ones that I would pick to do. I would have much preferred that they did this in animation, but whatever. It's not my 250 million plus that's being flushed down the toilet. Now, was this live action remake one of the rare few that's actually better than the original?
Fuck no.
This movie is absolutely worse than the original in almost every way. They kept it very campy where they definitely should not have, and then they played it completely serious the rest of the time, and those two tones completely pushed against each other the entire movie. It's painfully obvious that this movie was originally going to be something completely different, but after the backlash, Disney delayed the movie for an entire year and added all the parts from the original movie. Now let's address the elephant in the room before we tackle this movie. Rachel Zegler has said some very controversial stuff over the course of this movie's production. Now, I think that just a teeny bit of the hate is a little much. I feel that one of the comments she made that got so much hate was just a joke. And I don't think the idea of saying that some aspects of the original Snow White movie are dated is that terrible of a thing to say. It is almost 90 years old. But the way she says these things does kind of make her sound like an absolute brat who doesn't like or understand why people enjoy the original movie. And I honestly think there were times where she forgot what movie she was promoting. She has also said some very indefensible things that I really don't care to comment on. They're not completely relevant to the movie. Now, with all that out of the way, you may think that she is horribly miscast, but she is without a doubt the most talented actress in the whole movie. She can sing very well, and there are a lot of songs throughout this movie, but that's all I can really compliment her on, though. I'm having trouble telling whether or not there were times where she was doing a poor job or was given poor material to work with. I'm a little more inclined to think that it was a bit of both, but I think it's mostly the material because there are a lot of very campy scenes in this movie that feel very out of place. That's all I can really say without spoiling the movie, so if you even care, then spoiler warning. And the first 30 minutes of this movie were actually okay. They added a couple songs that weren't good, but they weren't terrible either. And I was actually thinking that if this was a completely different, brand new animated Disney princess movie, and they actually removed the handful of beats from the original Snow White movie, then this movie would probably hold up a lot better. But then they add this Robin Hood style plot, and it's just a lot of talking and singing about how the kingdom has changed and people need to be nicer. Then they do the poison apple scene, and then once that's done, Snow White goes to challenge the queen for a rule, and then she becomes ruler and happily ever after. Now, the leaks of the Seven Dwarves being replaced by the Seven Bandits was in fact real, but the bandits were only in the movie for like 20 minutes max, and the prince character ends up being their leader, and it's very clear that the bandits were completely replaced by the dwarves during the reshoots. And this movie absolutely contradicts what Rachel said about Snow White not being saved by the prince. They do end up doing the traditional ending to Snow White with the poison apple and the prince kissing her to wake her up. That's all in the movie. And I am very mixed on the songs in this movie. For the most part, they're not for me, but I did enjoy the extended version of Hi Ho, Whistle While You Work was fun. And I actually kind of like the Evil Queen song. I know that's absolutely crazy, but it was one of the few fun parts of the movie. Now, speaking of the Evil Queen, Gal Gadot is acting in a completely different movie. And I might be completely crazy, but I actually kind of liked it a little. Her villain song was very campy, and it didn't have very good lyrics, but it was one of the only times where I was mildly entertained by this movie. She is clearly having a lot of fun while she's playing this very over-the-top character, but it's in a more serious movie, and it doesn't fit the tone of the movie at all. I also thought the serious parts of the movie were pretty shit, so I don't really care. I actually think this movie would have been a lot better if they went full campy and fun and not try to tell a serious story at all. Now, this movie actually attempted to do some things that I think would have been an improvement over the original, but they just fumbled it completely. The prince wasn't really a character in the original movie. He had a scene with Snow White where they fall in love, and then he shows up at the end to bring her back and carry her off into the sunset. Now, I don't think what this movie did with the prince was better at all. They basically made him Robin Hood and then forced him to fall in love with Snow White. The scene was incredibly forced, and it doesn't work well at all. And then that's kind of it. He doesn't really do a ton else. Then you have the evil queen, where they give her a lot more to do in the movie, but they don't add to her character. She's still just insanely evil and obsessed with being the fairest of them all. So it doesn't make it better, and it really just makes the movie worse because it's just a longer version with all of the things that you could critique about the original movie without any of the charm or leeway with it being the oldest animated movie ever to exist. The best version of this movie absolutely would have been if they made the entire movie based around the love story between Snow White and the prince, made it animated, and used their time to properly develop Snow White, the prince, and the evil queen as characters, instead of just making Snow White the purest good person, making the evil queen pure evil, and the prince is still just a romantic interest. He's not a character otherwise. Now, let's get on to the best and the worst part of this movie. The Seven Dwarves. The dwarves look absolutely horrifying. It looks like they hopped right off the Polar Express, only it's even worse. The Polar Express was a 100% animated movie that came out over 20 years ago. These dwarves are side by side with real people, and it is so off-putting. They look like wax figurines that are just moving around by like animatronics. It's so weird. They look absolutely horrendous. Now, with all that being said, I was actually able to get used to them by the midpoint of the movie, and they were the only characters that the majority of the time they were on screen was actually fun to watch. The Hi-Ho song was fun, their fight during breakfast was fun, and the only good joke in the entire movie came from Doc. But they didn't look good, and they do make Dopey talk, which I felt was pointless. If someone else watched it and wants to explain what the hell the point of doing that was, then please explain in the comments. But any goodwill I have from the movie or the dwarves as a character is completely undone because ultimately in the end, they have nothing to do with taking down the evil queen. In the original movie, after the queen murders Snow White, the dwarves chase her, and the chase results in the evil queen falling off a cliff. That is not a tricky climax to improve on, but they somehow made it 10 times worse. The evil queen can't convince any of her subjects to kill Snow White after she gets revived from the poison apple. So she goes to her magic mirror, and then the mirror tells her that she will never be better than Snow White. The evil queen gets mad, breaks the mirror, and then the mirror disintegrates her. The climax is just all the cliches that you could think of that everyone is so tired of without anything fun or exciting happening. The way Snow White convinces people not to be on the side of the evil queen was just by remembering the names of the citizens. And that's it. That's literally all that happens. They built up the prince, the bandits, and the dwarves as big players in the story. And then in the end, they just stand there and do nothing and just watch and stand and kind of just let everything happen. It's just so much worse than the original. Now, I do feel the need to state that I am neither 5 or a little girl. So therefore, I am not this movie's target audience. This movie was not meant to appeal to me, and I was still able to enjoy parts of this movie. If you're a parent that wants to do something fun with your kids, then this isn't the worst way to spend a couple hours. However, if you're literally anyone else, just skip this. It's not good. It's not so bad it's good. There are plenty of other good movies currently out right now, and I'm quite frankly tired of these live-action remakes. Don't go to see this one. We can only hope that Disney gets the message and stops all of these shitty live-action remakes, but something tells me they won't. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'd love to know what else you guys would like me to talk about. Next week, I'm doing the first 3 episodes of Daredevil. Thank you so much for watching, and take care.